House Bill 17 by Representative Emerson. It's an act to amend Title 18 relative to elections to provide for a party primary system of elections for certain offices, including provisions to provide for nomination of candidates for general elections. And Senator Miguez sends up technical amendments made at the suggestion of a Bureau note and moves adoption of those amendments.
Without objection. Senator Miguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm happy to bring before you HB 17 by Representative Emerson. This bill provides for a party primary election system for Congress and the Louisiana Supreme Court effective 2026. Our current jungle primary system is unique in all the wrong ways. With your support today of HB 17, we can change that together. Our jungle primary system puts Louisiana at a disadvantage. Our congressional primary election takes place in November and can often require a costly and time-consuming December runoff. This delay means our Louisiana congressional delegation members are a month behind their peers in this transition process. Things like building staff, receiving briefings, performing critical transition tasks, and most importantly, competing for preferential committee assignments. This disadvantage is especially impactful for newly elected members of Congress. The current primary system also prevents Louisiana's major political parties from selecting their preferred candidates. A party primary system ensures that both major parties, Republicans and Democrats, have representation on the final general election ballot. A party primary system also prevents back-to-back fall elections, giving voters a better opportunity to vet candidates from a shorter ballot, allowing them to better select candidates which reflect their political ideology. This extra time also helps prevent party division. This bill allows no party candidates to be added to the general ballot through a signature petition process. The bill in its present posture requires a primary candidate who receives a majority in order to advance to the general election ballot. In the event no candidate receives a majority vote in the party primary, the two candidates from each political party that receives the greatest number of votes will be voted on in a second party primary election. This system is not new to Louisiana. I repeat, members, this system is not new to Louisiana. Let's go back in time to 2028 and 2010. Louisiana operated under a party primary system and successfully elected Majority Leader Steve Scalise, Treasurer John Schroeder, and Governor Jeff Landry to Congress. It's important to point out that also Cedric Richmond was elected to Congress under this party primary system. Louisiana today uses a similar party primary system in the presidential election when parties select their nominees for president. Both President Donald Trump and President Joe Biden were elected under this system. While I know change is never easy, I know that each and every one of you here today are going to make the tough decisions necessary to improve our great state. Our new Governor Jeff Landry has made party primaries a priority. He has also promised to lead our state in a new direction to benefit all of Louisiana. I appreciate his willingness to work with this body and our leadership to put this bill in the proper posture today that with your help will result in success for our state. Members, I ask for your support for this much-needed election reform, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Senator Pless is on for a question.
Senator Miguez, first and foremost, welcome to the Senate. I think this is the first time we've had an opportunity to debate a bill, but I do have some questions regarding this legislation. So the first thing, one of the things that you mentioned is that it'll help in terms of the timeline of us getting our Congress people to DC so they're not behind their colleagues. If it's specific to that, why are the Supreme Court justices included in this bill?
Well, first, Senator DePlessis, you look a lot better up close than as far as you did in the House.
I know.
But it's a great question. So when this bill originally started in the House of Representatives, Representative Emerson and myself, we both preferred the original format, which you also, as you know, included Bessie, it included the public service commissioners, included district courts, it included the legislature and statewide elected officials. But as you know, this process is about compromise, it's about negotiation. And like I mentioned before, Governor Landry obviously preferred the original format of the bill, but in the means of compromise, he's worked with the members of the legislature, and the negotiations are still underway. As you know, it's a very fluid process, but that's where the bill is today. That's where the parties have come together to try to see if we can get a majority vote in this process. So although I would prefer to have the rest of them there, that's where the bill lies in its present posture.
Okay, well, I'm glad you mentioned compromise, and I'm glad to hear that, because I think that compromise, I know compromise is essential to government working. Do you believe by having party primaries, this makes our government more partisan or less partisan as we talk about this thing about compromise?
Well, I think what's important is that we remember individuals' constitutional rights, their rights to freedom of association. Just like they have a right to freedom to non-associate, they have a right to associate. And in America, whether we like it or not, we have a party system, and it's been dominated by two major parties. You serve in one of those parties, I serve in the other, and I think that those individuals in those parties ought to have that right to associate, ought to have that right to decide who are their preferred candidates, what candidates match their political ideology. And I don't think we should have Republicans going to your your party primary system and deciding who the Democratic candidate will be. You can best decide that, just like I think I can best decide who the Republican candidate will be.
So would this bill not force people to have to decide, because you basically would have Democrats, Republicans, and unaffiliated individuals who don't want to be part of either party to not be able to participate? This kind of seems to go against that concept of freedom you're talking about.
Well, just like we talked about having a right of association, you have a right to disassociate, and those no party affiliated, unaffiliated voters have a right not to associate with a party. That's a choice they made. But if you look in the bill, there's ways that if they're a candidate, they can get on the general ballot. And there's also ways that.
Can you describe that the way in which they would get on the ballot?
Yeah, I'm looking at the revised statute. Now, if you look at revised statute 18441C, it's already a provision in law which allows them to get on the ballot through a signature process. So you first have to determine whether they're recognized as a major party here in Louisiana. Without reading the exact statute, it has something to do with they have a 5% threshold that they have to. They look back at some of the most recent presidential ballots, and if they received up to the 5% threshold, then they can have their own party primary. In the event that they did not make major party status, then they would go into the general ballot, and they would be allowed under the current law. As you know, when you went to run for state senator, you were allowed either to pay a fee or you had to get so many signatures. Where there's a signature number of signature requests that you can get onto the ballot on the general.
Okay, so I see somewhat of a case around fairness there, but we passed the bill just now. We voted on a bill just now about Senator Womack that appropriated, I believe, at least $5 million to be able to implement this system. So who pays for that? Who pays for that bill? Is it just Democrats and Republicans?
I'm not understanding your question, Senator.
In other words, to implement what we're doing right now, we just voted on a bill to appropriate the funds that would require us to be able to implement this system. Do Democrats and Republicans, are they the only taxpayers who pay for that?
Well, every taxpayer that pays taxes, that money goes to the state general fund, and it'll go towards paying for this election, regardless of what party they are.
So that means you'll have non-party individuals who are paying for this, but they would not be allowed to choose to vote in one of these elections. Is that?
What's that, Senator?
You have non-affiliated citizens of Louisiana who are paying for this new system who would be limited from being able to vote simply because they have not chosen a particular party. Is that not taxation without representation or participation?
I'm not sure what party is actually paying the taxes. It could be non-party Republican.
But it would be all citizens paying these taxes.
All citizens that file tax returns. But look, I don't want to have you waste too much of your time here, because I'm under the understanding that we're going to have an additional debate on some amendments that may address some of your concerns. So let's wait and see what those amendments come up. They may alleviate some of these concerns. Like I said before, this is a negotiation. There's been a lot of conversation, and I think that issue will get massaged a little bit later in this process.
Thank you for your willingness to compromise. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, yeah.
All right, any amendments?
First set of amendments by Senator Luno. They are set number 89 in your computer, 89, set of one amendment.
Senator Luna on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, this amendment is a pretty straightforward amendment. What it does, it removes the Supreme Court from this particular bill. It leaves in the congressional seats that are currently there, but it removes the Supreme Court from it. You know, the reason I did this amendment is because, in my judgment, our courts should be nonpartisan. And I think that's very important. And this bill puts partisanship directly in the center of what happens in our courts, it's specifically the Louisiana Supreme Court. Now let's talk about something that people don't like to talk about. This process that we're involved in right now is the most partisan thing we do. But you know what? It's just the nature of it. It's what it is. And it's okay for us to do that. But the fact of the matter is, we don't have to let that bleed over into all other forms of government, into other branches of the government. The other thing people don't like to talk about is something that we all know is a reality, and that is when you have closed primaries, it helps to elect people who are on the extremes of each party, to the left or the right. And sometimes that's problematic, and I can tell you, from having practiced law for over 30 years, that is problematic when you're talking about the court system. It is difficult when you have a judge who is too far to the left or too far to the right, and I think we can all appreciate that. Approximately 67% of the people in the state of Louisiana oppose the closed primaries. I sat in committee yesterday and I listened to the folks who were doing the polling talk about it and talk about how they ran these polls. I happen to know a little something about polls because I was a marketing major in college and I learned and didn't participate in a lot of polls. Their information was solid. Do you know another issue currently in the state of Louisiana where 67% of the people agree on it? Because I don't. And I think that's something that we need to think about carefully. We are disenfranchising over 800,000 voters in the state of Louisiana, citizens of this state who have a right to participate in the process of all of these. Now, I will give him this. In this particular bill, there is some merit and there is some argument to why the congressional seat should be included in this. That's why this amendment does not address that. It only addresses the Supreme Court. Those are the issues I wanted to present in this amendment, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Senator Barrow for a question. Question on the bill. Okay. Senator Morris has a question on the amendment.
My understanding is that there is going to be an amendment that will allow unaffiliated voters to vote in the primary with the party of their choosing that qualifies. Does that make you better okay with not passing your amendment?
I think it improves the bill, but I still think that the court should be taken out of this. And here's a reason. Let's say we take the courts out of this bill and we pass it for congressional races, and we let one or two of those occur, and we see how it goes. And we see what the cost is involved in it, because I think the cost is going to be much greater than what we've been told. We also see how that process can evolve, because it's going to take a lot of work. The Secretary of State has told us this already. It's going to take a whole lot of work to do this. This cuts back on that. It lets us go into the process with more certainty about what we're doing. It's not that we can't ever do it. We could even look at it again when we come into the regular term this year. But this is not something we need to pass this quickly when so many people are opposed to it, and it is going to disenfranchise so many voters, and it is going to inject partisan politics into the Louisiana Supreme Court.
You make a good point, but partisan politics is already involved in every single race in this state, number one. But I was just thinking that maybe the fact that there's an amendment, because your initial suggestion out of the box was the disenfranchisement of unaffiliated voters, and that's going to be rectified in an amendment coming up. But that was my only point. Thank you, Senator.
That was about my fourth or fifth point, but still, it is a point to be made.
Senator
further-
Seabaugh for the floor on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I rise in opposition to this amendment. You know, we come here, we talk a lot about compromise. And I like the bill better as it was originally introduced. I understand most of y'all didn't. So there was a compromise made between all parties, and this is what we ended up with. The amendments, as they were put on in committee, was a compromise between all parties, and this is where we are. So now picking away bits and pieces of it undoes the compromise. And I object to it on that basis alone, but I have others. Nobody's disenfranchised. Everybody can vote. Nothing about this bill in its original form or its current form keeps anybody from being able to vote. You can vote. If you want to vote in a Republican primary, be a Republican. But the amendment that is about to come up, I think Senator Fezzi is going to carry, is correct. It's going to say if you're non-affiliated, you can choose whether to vote in the Republican primary or the Democrat primary. That fixes the lion's share of the issues Senator Luno brought up here. This amendment is not necessary. Again, there was a compromise was made, and this is where we ended up with this bill. I liked it better as it was originally introduced. We're not going to get there with it. I understand that. I would request that you reject this amendment and let's stick with the deal that was made yesterday. Thank you.
Senator Luno, to close on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I guess I'm not a party here. I don't know exactly what a party is, but all the parties agreed. Well, I didn't agree. In fact, nobody even talked to me about it. I guess my vote doesn't matter here on the floor anymore, but the fact of the matter is I still have a voice and I can still get up here and talk about it. And I'm going to tell you some things that you ought to consider. Compromise is not over until it gets all the way through the process. You know, in the last term, we heard a lot about how, oh, we compromised this bill over in the House. Well, that was before it even got to the Senate. That's not a compromise. Compromise is when you go through the entire process. So that's what I'm doing up here today. I'm trying to reach a compromise. And I think it's a reasonable request because it doesn't say we'll never do this. It doesn't say we should never do this. It says let's put the brakes on. Let's just pump the brakes just a little while here. Let's not pass this in an abbreviated session where we don't have time to go through it completely and let everyone have their say on it. But maybe we should just pump the brakes just a little bit and slow this down and do the will of the people of this state. I think it speaks volumes when you see 67% of the people in the state of Louisiana agree on an issue. I would dare to say there's not another thing that is that strong, that many people agree on. And when you have that many people that agree on it, we should pay attention to it. I think this is a reasonable amendment, and I would ask for your favorable passage.
Senator Luno has offered an amendment to House Bill 17. Are there any objections? Senator Seabaugh objects. All those in favor vote yes. All opposed vote no. Clerk, will open the machine. Can you vote me no? Vote your machines. Vote your machines. Carter, yes. We through voting. Close machines. 9 yeas, 28 nays, and the motion fails. Next amendment.
Amendment sent up by Senator Fezzi. They are set number 93. 93.
On your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have two amendments. The first amendment is Amendment 93. What it does, it strictly adds the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education and the Public Service Commission to the bill to have them in the closed primary elections. It just adds those two. So I think under the compromise, we took a number of things out, and we're just adding these two back in. So I'd like y'all to go ahead and approve the amendment.
Senator Morris on the amendment. That's a question on the amendment.
Senator Facey, I understand what your amendment does, but I was under the impression that you were going to bring an amendment to allow unaffiliated voters to vote in primaries. Is that in a separate amendment, or?
Yeah, it's in amendment number 94.
Okay, thank you. The amendments only drop right before we vote, so I need to understand that. Thank you.
Thank you. I move to close on the amendment, like your final passage.
Senator Facey has offered an amendment to House Bill 17. Are there any objections? Any objections? Seeing no objection, amendment. Okay. Senator Luna, did you have a question on the amendment? I didn't mean to pass over you if I did. You object? Senator Luna objects to the amendment. Cloak with machines. All those in favor vote yes. All those opposed vote no. Cloak with machines. Yes. Vote your machines. Clerk will close the machine. 28 yeas, 9 nays. Amendment carries. Next amendment, if
Next
it is,
set of
is ready.
amendments are by Senator Fazy. They are set number 94. Set number 94.
On your amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, this amendment, I felt very strongly about us passing the closed primaries and didn't want to leave any of our voters out. So this basically fixes some of the worries that everybody has about not allowing people to vote. So what basically my bill does, for general elections, political parties shall make all nominations of candidates for party primary office by direct primary elections held pursuant to this part. In party primary elections, each voter voting in such election may vote only for a candidate who is affiliated with the same party as the voter. Voters not affiliated with the political party may vote in a recognized party primary, but such voter may vote only on one recognized party. So basically, it allows all of our non-party affiliates voters to be able to vote in either the Republican or the Democratic primary. So I think that solves a lot of the problems. And any questions?
Senator Barrow for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. So explain to me how that would work. They would have to do what in order to be able to qualify to be able to vote in either party?
They just have to sign and saying they're whatever they're, when they go to vote, they wouldn't, like if they went to vote in the Republican primary, they wouldn't, once they signed up, they wouldn't be able to go vote in the Democrat primary and vice versa.
So an individual who is no party or independent or whatever they may be, unaffiliated, okay, they would go and they would sign up. And how would that process work? How would they know to go and sign up, and how would they be notified that they have been accepted to vote with that party?
It should be publicized, but the thing is when they go to vote, they won't be turned away from voting if they have not voted already in the opposite primary.
Who's going to be responsible for that?
All of the ones who control the voting process.
I'm having a hard time really understanding how that would work. So I'm going to use myself as an example, although I am a registered Democrat. If I decided that I wanted to, if I was an independent and I wanted to go vote Republican, where would I go? How would that process work? Who would notify me, and how would I know that I've actually received that permission to vote with the Republican Party?
I don't think that this includes independents. It's just voters that are non-party.
Non-affiliated.
Non-affiliated. So far as that goes, when they go to vote, in the old days of the closed primaries, when they went to vote, they just couldn't vote at all. They'd have to go re-register and go ahead and wait till the next election. Here, it allows them to vote. They cannot be turned away.
But who decides? So is the secretary going to be responsible for this? Is this a task of the secretary office, or is this a task of each individual party?
It's going to be set up if they go to vote, their number goes down that they voted already. They won't be able to come back and vote again.
I don't think we are. You're not understanding my question. My question is, how do they know? So if I'm unaffiliated and I want to come and register and vote as a Republican, who tells me that I've been accepted to vote?
I think it's at the office, but they were not saying they have to register as a Republican to vote or a Democrat.
So they don't have to register, but the Secretary of State be responsible for the task when this comes up and giving the voter the notice that they've been accepted to go vote.
No, they just go vote like they normally do, and they won't, once they vote, they can vote in either primary, but they can't vote twice. If they vote in the Republican primary, they can't go and decide, well, I'm gonna go vote in the Democrat primary. If they, okay, you kind of.
That part is clear. I'm trying to find out who's going to be responsible and tasked with making sure that that happens. But it's the Secretary of State's office.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Senator Luna for a question on the amendment. Senator Luna?
Senator, does your amendment, does it deal with whether or not a person of a third party can actually go through the process and get on the ballot?
This amendment does not deal with that, but there is a way they can do it.
And can you explain that process to me just briefly?
Basically, they can just register as a Republican or a Democrat instead of an independent or whatever they registered as.
So if they don't want to be a Democrat or a Republican, they can't get on the ticket?
If they're registered as something else, because it's all about a closed primary.
All right, so what's the cost associated with that? Is there a fiscal note?
There is a physical note, but I don't know what the cost is as of yet because we hadn't got to that point.
So then gross note showed right around $30 million over a 5-year period. Does that sound right?
And that was for a lot. That was if every election was switched to closed primary. It's been. That's why I don't have the number. I didn't want to put up a number I didn't know because since we've taken a number of the elections out, it's changed drastically.
So we're voting on this amendment, and we don't have a clue what this is going to cost.
Well, all elections cost something, so it's a matter of what it's going to cost. I mean, it shouldn't make a big difference.
It shouldn't make a big difference what it costs, or it shouldn't make a big difference from 30 million.
It shouldn't be the 30 million because we did not include all of those elections.
So what do we have to do to get a fiscal note on this to find out what it's going to cost to do this after your amendments?
Well, the amendments are actually helping the process of the whole bill to go through. So there's still a cost for everybody to vote. I don't know how much big a difference it's going to make whether it's closed primaries or open primaries.
All right, thank you.
Lauren. It's not. It keeps doing it.
Senator Luna, I'm sorry, you want the floor for the, yes, sir, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, this is what I was talking about a while ago when I was talking about the amendment I proposed. Why are we rushing this through? Why is this all of a sudden the biggest emergency you can imagine where we're going to pass this legislation, this amendment, and we don't have a clue what this cost? I don't know about you, but that matters to me, and I think it matters to our constituency. They want to know what this stuff costs, just like I want to know. And we don't have a clue. We need to pump the brakes. We need to slow down, we need to find out what's going on, and we need to make informed decisions. It's important to know what the costs associated with it are.
Question on the amendment, Senator Edmonds.
So some questions are brought up about the administration of an election just a few minutes ago. The Secretary of State's office already controls and dictates all of our policies and election codes. Is that not correct?
That's correct.
And then our clerks of court then administer under the Secretary of State's office those codes to the people. Is that not correct?
Yeah, they transfer the process to the people.
So we have been found that we're like number 6 in election integrity in the country right now. Does this amendment or this bill change any of those administration of the election code at all?
I met with the Secretary of State yesterday on all of this, and that's why we moved this not to start till 2026, to make sure she has a full 2 years to implement and make sure everything's the safest elections that she could do.
So my point is that your amendment does not change any of those processes. It just gives the clarity of adding a closed primary and then adds the particular couple of additions between federal, then you've added back the judges are there, and then you've added Bessie, and that's all your amendment does. Is that not correct? Doesn't change election code, doesn't check any of the things that Secretary Landry would have to enforce. Is that not correct?
That's correct.
And earlier, and just a few moments ago, we just added the necessary funds in the supplemental bill, which is what we do always in not only elections, but in a variety of things. We bring supplemental dollars to fund the things that we need to do. This is a sizable process that will probably take us into the next session to make certain now over till 2026 that we get this correct. Is that not the way you see this?
That's exactly the way I see it.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you.
Senator Lambert for a question on the amendment.
Another one.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Facey, I'm going to tell you what I envision how this is going to work. I'm a Republican, but if I'm an other member, another party or whatever it is, non-affiliated, I would assume when I go and vote right now, they have a roll of the voters. I have to sign my name, they call my name out, and it says Republican. If I'm a person of an other party, I would assume I would sign something saying I want to vote in either the Democrat or the Republican primary. And that's how you would figure out what you could do and how this would work. I would assume that's what's going to happen based on common sense. And once I sign that, then I wouldn't be able to vote in the Democratic primary if I chose to vote in a Republican primary. Is that how you see this working?
Yeah, and actually, talking to the State Central Committee, what I wanted to do is people that didn't have the knowledge of what was going on and didn't, and then when they go to vote, I wanted to make sure they could fix the process at that moment and not be turned away to vote.
Right, and a lot of this will be that it will put out public information that even though you may not be a Democrat or a Republican, you are allowed to vote in this primary. You're just going to have to declare at that point, or you may have to change and I'm not sure if independents are a party or not. If they're possibly a party, that's not a party primary because you're affiliated with the independents. And that's something we'd have to work through. Okay.
Senator Connick for a question on the amendments.
How you doing, Senator Facey? I think I know the answer to this, but I want to get it on the record. Based on the amendment, will the state central committees still have the ability to determine who's on the ballot and who's not on the ballot?
The reason why we're bringing the amendment, so it wouldn't be strictly put into the hands of the State Central Committee. We wanted to make sure, as legislatively, that those non-party voters could be able to vote.
All right, so legislatively, those non-party voters can vote, so the State Central Committee will have no say-so in preventing someone from not running for office.
Not if we pass this amendment.
Thank you.
Senator Miguez on the floor for the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to clear the record. I know Senator Luno came up and talked about the fiscal note. It's important to point out that this bill does not go into effect until 2026, so the fiscal note is very simple. It won't cost anything up until that point. It's also important to point out that this is not necessarily being rushed through the process. There was a task force where congressmen participated. I know in particular Congressman Scalise, Congressman Higgins, and I can speak to my Congressman Higgins. They vetted this issue, and they saw the disadvantages that I mentioned earlier for the congressional delegation showing up late and being elected to Congress. And my Congressman Higgins endorses this. So it has been discussed. It doesn't go into effect until 2026, so it gives our Secretary of State the opportunity to look at this process and put procedures and programming in place to implement it. And if we find, when the Secretary of State gets an opportunity to settle in and find some major disparities or some major extreme costs, I know her very well. She's very prudent in her job. She'll report that disparity to the legislature, and we have an opportunity on the 2024 regular session, the 2025 regular session, to make changes. But the governor is asking you to trust him. Senator Luno, I know you trusted the last governor a lot. We're just asking you to trust this governor so we can make this bill move forward and reform our election process and have some successes for the state of Louisiana. This is a new dawn, a new day. Members, I ask your support, and I just want to put that on the record. Thank you so much.
Senator Facey, to close on your amendment.
Members, I know this is a big change for the state of Louisiana, but that's what we're trying to do, is make it better. All this amendment does is make sure it doesn't hurt anybody who's a registered voter. We're trying to make it right, trying to get everybody on the right track, and just get our state going in the right direction. So I'd appreciate it if y'all would go ahead and approve this amendment.
Senator Facey has brought up amendments to House Bill 17, to which, is there an objection? Yes, we have an objection. Therefore, the clerk will open the machines. All those in favor vote yes. All opposed vote no. Clerk will open the machines. Vote your machines. Vote your machines. Clerk will close the machines. 28 yeas, 10 nays, and that amendment carries. Back on the bill, Senator Miguez. Senator Barrow for a question on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Miguez, you know, normally when you come with your first bill, this is not actually your first bill, like it's your bill, but you handle it for somebody else. You know, we kind of have the kind of playing around with it, but we can't play with this issue because it's way too serious. So we have to hold that for another day. But I want to ask you about the budgetary piece of this bill. So I'm looking at the fiscal note, and it's saying that it's going to cost anywhere from $11 to $19 million for the implementation of this process. Is that correct?
Well, the fiscal note has changed with this bill through the process, and it'll continue to change. And I know the Secretary of State is, vigorously trying to figure out exactly what this is going to cost. I'm pretty confident that it will cost a lot less than this fiscal note puts it out to be once the Secretary of State's office has an opportunity to digest and fully get with their staff. So I'm not as concerned with the fiscal note because I know that Louisiana is charged with making sure and using our funds and taxpayer dollars to make sure we have a safe and secure election process. And if the governor and this legislature can find a more efficient way to run our elections, and it is well worth the money. We've saw budgets come through here where members have spent money on different projects and have not met the same priority as this, our election system. It is the backbone, and it holds our democracy together, and it's well worth the money, and I'm pretty confident it'll come in at a lot less cost. So I wouldn't be concerned with that.
So you're pretty confident that it's going to come in a lot less because of what? Why do you think it's going to be a lot less?
Because I think the Secretary of State's office has just had an opportunity to look at it, and they want to be very conservative in their projections. So I'm sure they came off the cuff with a number, but I think as we work through it and they get an opportunity to digest it, I'm pretty sure it's going to come down. And look, like I mentioned before, if the Secretary of State, she's newly elected, she's just in her position, although she's had some experience in the office, for what I hear, she's going to do a great job. And she's going to come back, and I'll probably be the first person she calls, actually the second. She'll call Representative Emerson first. She'll call me second and say, guys, we have a problem. And then we'll have the opportunity to address that before 2026. Remember, it doesn't go into effect till 2026. And if that's an issue, then I'd be happy to work with you and figure out ways where we can make the legislation more efficient. But this is something that our governor has made a priority. It's something that he thinks that will make Louisiana better. And I think it's incumbent upon us to work with him to figure out how we can make this legislation a reality. And don't be scared off by that fiscal note. I'm pretty sure it's going to come in much lower than that.
I know Secretary Landry. I served with her in the House, and I know that she's very thorough, and I know that she is definitely going to do her due diligence. I am truly, fully convinced of that. However, what if it comes in higher? So I'm just going to stop right there. So this is 2024, so next year we are expecting to have the roll-off. Am I correct? The 4/5 of the penny?
Oh, so we're talking about the budget now. Yes, we have, we just saw some surplus dollars be recognized, and it'll be the following fiscal year. The 5-year forecast shows about $500 million of a shortfall.
So if we have a shortfall, we know what would be cut, right? What's in the line item to be cut, what normally is cut when we have a shortfall.
Well, the governor hasn't put forward his executive budget yet. He's going to put that forward. There's other things on the revenue side that could affect that before now and then. But if you're talking about prioritizing, I actually have the opportunity, and I really appreciate the president giving me the opportunity to sit on the Finance Committee where we'll have some further discussions. But remember, this is our election system. This doesn't matter if you're Republican, Democrat, unaffiliated. This is the cornerstone of our democracy. And it is a priority for making sure that we fund this election system. So we'll be looking at the priorities on the Finance Committee, and we'll be monitoring the budget. It's just the budget is about as fluid as this bill is right now. So I'm sure you'll work with me to make sure that we prioritize our spending in this state.
Absolutely, but just as this is important, so is health care and education, roads and highways, making sure that people have access to being able to go and receive health care. So I know that's important to you as well, but we have to be looking long-term and taking all those factors into consideration, because as lawmakers, that's what we are charged to do. So as we are looking at this, I want to know how much has been really given in terms of consideration of the impact of the cost of this, based upon the fact that we know next year the 4/5 of the penny is rolling off.
Well, wouldn't you agree that these types of, you talk about our election system, health care, you talk about these issues are very important. So those things come before pet projects and other wasteful spending in the budget. So when we get an opportunity to take a look at the budget, I'll make sure and take that into account in the Finance Committee and make sure we fund our election system, and we make sure that our dollars are used for the best investment to get the best return and improve quality of life for our citizens before we spend on wasteful pet projects or some of the things that we saw in last year's budget.
I would agree with you on that. And I would say, for some folks, they see things a little differently. They don't always agree on what you may deem as being a priority and what others may deem as a priority. But at the end of the day, I think we both agree that health care, education, our roads are definitely a priority. And when you look at the roads in this state, and while we've made some great strides and we have accomplished a lot, we have a lot more and a long way to go. We have a lot of bridges that are not repaired. in disrepair, and people can't travel. People have to travel all the way around, which is costing them even more money. So as we are looking at how much this is going to cost, which I think this is the high end, because it starts at 11 million, up to 19 million to implement, and then the following year or 2 years later, it's 10 million. That's a lot of money. And do you know how much the 4/5 of the penny is that's going to roll off? How much it brings to the state?
It's about, the last time I looked, it's about a $450 million fiscal note per year. But look, we're probably going to have some disagreements on how we fund higher education, health care, different projects, whose roads are more important. Every member, you know, we've had those debates. But you and I have the opportunity to speak here on the floor today. And how are we given that opportunity? Because we live in the greatest country in the whole world, because we have democracy. And what keeps our democracy? What's the cornerstone? Our election system. We've got, you agree with me, we have a great person that's running our election system. We trust her. We have to put our election system prioritized before all, because it allows us this opportunity to have those delightful debates and figure out how to improve quality of life for our citizens. So I just ask you to trust, ask you to be open-minded, ask you to just be open-minded to giving the governor and giving this legislature the opportunity to reform our election system to make sure it works best for the people.
I am open-minded. That's one thing that I can say. But you know, if it was broke and if we weren't ranked so high, I'd be more open to maybe changing it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Barrow.
Senator Duplessis for the floor on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I have real concerns about this bill, and I'd just like to just hit a few quick points. Senator Miguez talked about the reasons why we need this bill, talked about how our federal delegation suffers as a result of the timeline. Colleagues, the Speaker of the House of Representatives in U.S. Congress is from Louisiana. The majority leader for the House of Representatives is from Louisiana. I'm not sure how we are suffering as a result of this timeline issue, number one. Senator Miguez also talked about how good it was in 2008, all these folks who were elected as a result of the closed primary system that we had. But he didn't mention the fact that in 2010, we came right back and changed it. So my question is, if we had it, and then we got rid of it 2 years later, then how great of a system was it? I really believe that this bill will cause mass confusion. I really believe that the people of this state are going to be frustrated, because before they vote, they're going to have to ask, wait, is this a congressional election? Is this a Supreme Court election? Is this a Bessie election? Is it a PSC election? What election is it? Or is it just an election? The people of Louisiana like the way we have it. I know that because we just went through an election cycle. So even if we put the substance of the bill aside, the gravity of this legislation and the lack of thoroughness and time that we have had to debate this legislation is troubling. If this was a real issue for the people of Louisiana, we would have heard about it. I watched the governor's race, just like everybody in this chamber did. And whether or not any of us had opposition for re-election, we all had legislative races as well. So regardless of what part of the state you are from, nobody, no citizen, asked for this. We heard Governor Landry talk about three things primarily: crime, jobs, and education. I listened very intently when he gave his inaugural speech. Even in his inaugural speech, he didn't mention closed primaries. So I'm just really concerned at the speed in which this is being done. I'm all for having a healthy debate and discussion around what's best for our electoral process, but I'm really concerned about the confusion that this is going to cause for our voters. I'm really concerned about the cost that this is going to have on taxpayers and the unforeseen consequences. And I just really would hope that we would go about things a little differently. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. And I think it's already been said that if it's not broke, don't fix it. So I just want to just formally and respectfully lodge my objections to this bill. I'm very concerned, and I think it's going to cause real concerns if it gets passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Plessis. The board is clear. Senator Miguez to close.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll make a comment. Nobody really wants to be here, Senator Plessis. We have been forced to be here because a federal judge has asked us to draw redistricting maps for Congress. But we serve the people, and we're here to work for the people. It doesn't mean that we can't take other important issues. This is not being rushed through the process. We've had a task force to study this with members of our Congress. My congressman endorses this. I don't think there's any significant cost that you're going to see on this. We're going to have an opportunity to vet this before 2026. Our Secretary of State's office gets an opportunity to weigh in. We talk about polling. There's other polls out there that show that this is supported by the people of Louisiana. In that poll, it shows that 60% of the people believe that how we elect our president makes more sense than how we elect our state and local elected officials. So with that, I ask for your support. I also want to reach out and thank all the members of the Senate Governmental Affairs staff for working with the governor's office to bring this bill into its present posture. I would prefer to have all the original version of this bill with all those different offices included. But this is where we are today, and I want to thank those members. I want to thank our leadership for working with the governor. Members, I ask for your favorable passage.
Members, Senator Miguez has moved final passage on House Bill 17. When the machines are open, all those in favor vote yea, all opposed vote nay. Madam Secretary, please open the machines. Vote your machines. Vote your machine, members. Senator Abraham, Senator Lambert, yes. Senator Morris, yes. Senator Presley, yes. Senator Owen, yes. Senator Abraham, still yes. Senator Presley is a yes. Senator Owen is a yes. Clerk will close the machine. 29 yeas, 9 nays, and the bill is moved favorable. Machine. Gotcha. All right, members, we are going to stand at recess.